So this is the video that I promised I was going to make about Andrew Tate. Or at least point it in his general direction, because I don't have that much knowledge of the man. I gave up after a point. I thought it would be interesting to look into him because he seems to have a very polarizing effect on a lot of people. I've never actually met somebody who thought he was a nice or agreeable person. I think he's very disagreeable, and I think he's deliberately disagreeable. And perhaps that stems from what Jordan Peterson says about disagreeable men get more done than agreeable men, or people, I should say, rather than men. But we'll refer to a man here. And this might be a deliberate ploy on his part. In fact, I would be surprised if it isn't, because his disagreeableness seems to be the one thing that he seems to gauge for what he's doing. He'll be very disagreeable with people he can get away with, and not so disagreeable when it doesn't suit him, like, for instance, on that Piers Morgan interview he did. But he still maintained incredible arrogance, which is, I suppose, disagreeable to a certain degree. Now, I was going to do this video by looking into the man, but a week or so into, just when I had a minute, I would look at an Andrew Tate video. I would type Andrew Tate in. I discovered that it was your opinion, the image of Andrew Tate you were given wholly depended on your YouTube history, because you would get all the ones that said he was a bastard, and then if you had another, if you perhaps looked at a lot of, gun channels or Jordan Peterson channels, I don't know what, you would get the ones where he is actually asked for advice and he's on panels to give advice, and his speech and his mannerisms and certain things are slightly less unpalatable. I was always interested. I'm thinking, well, I've never once met somebody who liked him, because obviously with my YouTube history, I got all the people who disliked him. And then I was thinking, well, how come there are people who like him? Who is that? And I've mentioned the Dry Creek Wrangler School before on my channel, where I think it's Dwayne, him with the beard and the cigar. Big cigar. He actually very briefly mentioned Andrew Tate to say, yeah, well, there's a man who, not a very agreeable man, but sometimes what he says makes a great deal of sense. And I'm thinking, well, what's he said? I also know a guy, my friend Wes, who runs a film channel. I think it's called Open Tap. You can go and look at that. Well, him and a few friends run it, I should say, a part of a Facebook group I'm part of, linked with the Critical Drink, inspired by the Critical Drinker. I'll leave in one of them links at the bottom for that. Don't let us forget, for Christ's sakes. But he said, Andrew Tate is an arsehole, but he's often right. And I was like, okay. Now, all this is well and good, but it suddenly came to me that I was going to have to expend a great deal of research and time on Andrew Tate, a man who has absolutely no influence on my life, and a man who, other than a passing character study for a bit of a mental exercise, I had absolutely no interest in. I looked at one of his fights. He seems like a decent enough kickboxer. I've looked at a few of his videos. There was nothing I particularly found that I wanted to know. I don't need advice on women from Andrew Tate. I know he's got half a dozen on the go at the same time. He seems to think this is a good thing. I'm not sure if they seem to think that's a good thing, or they're just willing to put up with it because of the money. But I found myself one day, I was doing a bit of exercise, and I was sitting there thinking, well, how do you how do you compare Andrew Tate? What metric do you use against Andrew Tate? Then I thought, well, what about all these other... I didn't actually think it in this fashion. I just finished watching David Goggins. Now, I don't know if everybody knows David Goggins, but he used to be in the Navy SEALs. And yeah, everybody's been in the Navy fucking SEALs. He really has been in the Navy fucking SEALs. And he did that as a sort of, I suppose, self-project of self-improvement. I do apologize, my head's moving back and forth here. The cat's right down there, and she's going to start kicking off if I don't keep stroking her. So, yeah, this is another very well planned out video by the Grumpy Geordie and his cat. But anyway, thank you. And I'd listened to David Goggins. And the video was not about Tate, but Goggins was talking about himself. And the interviewer said, "Oh, I haven't heard from you in a bit. What, Dave?" And he goes, "No, I've been a bit busy. I'm ad-libbing here. I've decided I was a bit too much into podcasts and what have you, and I was losing my edge. I was losing my calloused mind and hardness. And, you know, he's all into this mental hardening so you could do the most unpleasant things to yourself in the world as an act of self-improvement. And it's better than it sounds. I'm just ad-libbing. And so he basically, Goggins dropped off the planet for about 4 years, I believe, and went and worked on himself and came back. And he did this for a pittance. He got a job in this sort of like airborne fire brigade, where if there's a forest fire, they'll jump into a plane, and then when they're above the fire, they'll jump out the plane and go and dig trenches and put the fire out. And they do that for a few days until the fire's out, and they'll go home, presumably via the pub. And he did this purely because he wanted to exercise his mind to be calm. And I'm like, I was sitting there looking at him, and I'm like, well, you can pick fault with Goggins. I wouldn't say he's the best planner in the world. He's often just jumped in with just things with poor feet and come out injured because of it. But he certainly gives it a college try. More than that. And he's humble. He's back on the sort of like the popularity circuit now. He's just had another book. He's probably trying to flog that. He could live off the money he made on the last book, in fairness. But just 1 second. Sorry about that. So, and he's he could live off the money that he made off the last book, but he's always trying to better himself, and he's not doing it. He's not doing it like overtly, we'll say. I mean, he's a right one for leaning out the windows with his shirt around his head and stuff, and we'll all get a good laugh out of that. And he's certainly not shy if he meets somebody in the gym. He's an absolute nutcase. I love him. But he has got his goals, and the goals are obviously mental toughening, physical improvement, stuff like that. Then we turn around and look at what Andrew Tate's goals is, and he admits it fully. I saw a video where he was being talked about, and he basically wanted more money. He's already getting more money than I'll ever get a year. I mean, he lived in London, so he'd need it, but... and he decided the best way to get his money was to get his 8 girlfriends all together. I think the number was 8. I mean, it's in the parish. After about 3, he was counting, you know what I mean? And then tell them he wanted them to basically do online sex work, like sitting there, legs akimbo, flicking the bean, feeding the horse, whatever you want to call it, And he was going to keep half the money, and he was going to set it all up, and he thought this was a fine deal. And you're like, fair enough. If all he said was true, was true, then fair, nobody's being harmed. But I mean, that's not self-improvement. That's improvement of one's position. That's improvement of one's, it's a word. Well, it doesn't matter. He's trying to improve external things, we'll say, not internal things. And then he launches onto advice about how to treat women. And you're just like, well, hang on a minute. You're allowed to have 8 women, like, one in each different port, because that's where he met them. He had them all in these different countries from when he used to do his kickboxing. And he thought it was, I'm not even shameless, but he seemed quite impressed with himself that he'd managed this. And then was quite, quite proud of it. And then he was I lose my train of thought here. And you're just like, well, I'd much rather live as I live now, in a flat I can barely afford to heat on minimum wage, than do that. And I really would. And I'm no saint when it comes to women. I won't go into it here, but I am far from a saint when it comes to women. And then he has the audacity to turn around and tell everybody else how to do all this. That, he always works. And he's so busy working, he just can't never seem to find a shirt or have time to button it up if he does. Cigars like that, again. Not quite as big as Dwayne's, but, they're still there. And it's swagger. And he's too clever to know it's not swagger, but he's using the swagger. And he's using the disagreeableness. Because as a person who dearly wanted the confidence to be disagreeable with people in their youth, I can fully see that he is appealing to people who don't have much in themselves, who are a little lost, a little unconfident, they've been put down, and he is displaying a persona that they envy, and that's how he's doing it. And I strongly get the impression he's doing that. Well, you see, this is the thing. I've immediately started giving my own opinion, and I wasn't going to do that. I was going to say you've got to look at him yourself, but now I'm going down the route of what I thought of him, what opinions I drew from him. But again, as I said, I had all of one side of YouTube. I had all of the Tate's a bastard side of YouTube. And I'm not backing away from that. I do, unless I did look at a few of the stuff he said that did make sense. I can't remember what it was now because it was a while ago. I find myself apologising again that I haven't put a video up in a while, but I've had several projects on the go and I haven't had time to scratch my arse. It's just I've got something finished early here and I thought I'd fly through a video, which is why this is, I never script my videos, but this is a little more rushed than normal, we'll say, and I do apologise, but I did want to get a video up. But you see the trap that sets of just assuming something about somebody. And now, of course, he's in prison, which is never a good first impression, being in prison, I imagine. Or jail, at least. But this is the thing, if somebody says something, I hate doing that. Somebody says something about, and it makes sense, no matter it is true, and it does make sense, generally makes sense, that's more or less it. You can't immediately just disregard it because of the person who said it. But unfortunately, Tate, who just seems to act in his own interests, and I don't think he's lied about that. Everything he has done has been to improve his life, which is not a bad thing. I think he's done a lot of charity as well. So he maintains something about orphanages or something, I don't know. But it just does go to show you, you can't take people at face value, especially on the internet. If I've learned anything from this little experiment, it's one, don't invest too much time in people like Andrew Tate. I mean, invest it in yourself for all means. I'm not saying don't listen to him, don't judge him, but don't do what I did and spend a goodly amount of my free time looking through videos trying to form an opinion of a man who will have no idea that you exist, never mind hold an opinion on him. Don't try and find a metric to gauge these people by. Are they acting in self-interest or general interest? Or what do they do with the things they gain? Who is gaining from their videos? I'm certain womankind is not gaining from Andrew Tate's videos. If he's saying that, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm a little rusty on what he was saying, but it did more or less come to, it's all right for me to have numerous women, but I wouldn't countenance a woman who did anything without my permission. Now, I'm sorry, that again is an ad-libbed quote, but that's more or less, and throughout he was deliberately using, and I don't want to be hypocritical here, I use them myself, but he was using vulgar terms, so it's all very measured, and it's all in self-interest, and you've got to watch out for that. Whereas again, if you compare him to a guy like David Goggins, who's quite happy to just drop off the map for 4 years to work in a job that he doesn't need purely because it's an unpleasant job that he finds hard, and then comes back, and one of the first things he says is, if you're going to do something, you've got to be humble. And he is a success by any metric. He's improved himself, he's improved his position, there's 100 things I could say about this. I could go into the other stuff, the materialism. Tate's got, 30 odd cars. Great. Can you judge him on that? Perhaps. Joe Rogan's got numerous cars because he loves cars. Do you judge Joe Rogan on that? Joe Rogan, is he an extrovert? Look at Joe Rogan. He tries to help people. He will talk to people constantly. He'll talk to his friends. It's his job. But he'll have people on who... The thing about Rogan is, I don't think he would hesitate to do something on his podcast if he thought it would help people. He wouldn't not have somebody on that podcast if he thought it would help some people, but it would detriment him. With Tate, I don't get that impression. It is a lesson in how you judge people and how much time you are willing to invest in judging them. And again, that is the rather unsuccessful conclusion I have drawn from this video, and I hope I haven't let a few people down. I don't think you've got high hopes for us anyway, but I say this every time, I will try and get videos out with more regularity, but I've just started playing music again, and I have been going through music lists and playing, and like going around the pubs and playing, and my work's not backbreaking, but it certainly has to take priority, and my mother has been a little bit ill, so I've been carting her hither and thither to hospitals and doctors and what have you. And of course, capoeira is the gym is there. I've got a lot to do before I even think about just sitting down for 20 minutes and making a video. But there's a 20-minute video for you. I hope you found it useful, if not enjoyable. Hopefully both. One with any luck, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.